Hi, my name is Dr. Pretty Basra. Welcome to the Women Money Business podcast. So on this episode, I want you to speak a little bit about my recent experience at a Women in Business conference. So basically this week I was invited to be on the panel of a Women in Business conference locally. And this was a really unique experience for me to be able to share some of my insights into financial barriers when it comes to business. And I suppose I didn't really quite realise in terms of that I had to overcome certain financial barriers in business. But then when obviously you're having these conversations with people, things come out. So what I found was that there was 4 panels, and the financial barriers panel was the one that most people engage with really fully. And it was really surprising that so many of the people have come across these kind of situations. I was on the panel with a angel investor and then also somebody from the British Business Bank, and it was really interesting to hear the statistics in terms of lending for females compared to males. So the angel investor, which is Tony, she spoke about how only 3% of investment capital is given to females in the UK, but then globally it's 2%. And she is of Black origin, and she was saying that of that 2%, 0.1% is given to Black females, and I think that is shocking. I have seen that stat relating to Black females on LinkedIn a couple of times, and I just don't agree with it, and I just don't think it's right. On the flip side of that, when we're talking about sort of female entrepreneurship, I've seen a very big LinkedIn account. I won't say influencer, but like a big female LinkedIn account speaking about how we shouldn't label ourselves as female entrepreneurs. We just should call ourselves entrepreneurs. And why do we need to label ourselves and sort of narrow ourselves down? Now, whilst I understand why she is maybe saying this, I think I disagree with that, because if you don't put yourself as female entrepreneur or female founder or female CEO, then how do you sort of address those discrepancies that are happening, not just nationally, globally? And the fact is, if you're a female founder or female entrepreneur, then when the stats are done and the figures are done, it's very clear and you can relate to that so much more than just being called an entrepreneur. Because then if you're labeling yourself as an entrepreneur, when they're looking at their stats and figures and they're separating it into female entrepreneurs and males, then is that, are you sort of making your situation even worse potentially? So that was sort of one of the things that I thought was quite timely, considering sort of the panel that I was on this week. And on the panel, I was asked about whether people had sort of ridiculed me in terms of thinking that I needed to buy a business or trying to get financed for a business, and how that finance journey was. And I've touched on it in one of my other episodes before, but I probably haven't gone deep dive into the finance aspect of it. So obviously I'm an optician. I've not trained in any sort of business skills or anything like that. So when I was offered the practice that I now own, I had absolutely zero business skills. And the owner suggested that he could help me get finance to purchase the practice, which obviously a completely new world to me. I hadn't even had a house at that point, so I didn't know anything about sort of loans, mortgages, any of that sort of process. So he tried to help guide us, and he put us in touch with his accountants. And the accountants were saying that you'll need business forecasts. And again, I'm an optician, I don't know what a business forecast is. So we had to do 5-year business forecasts, and then the accountants kindly sort of worked with us, because they obviously had at the time the current owner's past history of accounts, so they could sort of forecast that. And that was probably my first not even dipping my toe, dive into the ocean in terms of business and finance. And then I approached the owner asked me to speak to his current bank manager, because obviously they manage the account, they know how the account runs for the current practice. So it made logical sense to approach that bank to say, guys, I'm selling my business. Can you fund this person to buy the business? Because you can see that what the past business performance is for the past 20, 30 years. And on paper, it sounded like that would work, but unfortunately, it didn't work that way. The bank said that they're not willing to lend to us because we weren't property owners, we'd had minimal savings, and we were very young at the time as well. On top of that, we've got no business experience. But then as opticians, we don't, which I've mentioned so many times before. But anyway, moving on. So that meant that we had to speak to, like I say, getting some business forecast done and go down the traditional route. And we approached several banks and everybody said no, apart from one bank, which was RBS. And I now know that RBS are very pro healthcare. So if there's any healthcare practitioners out there looking for funding for their businesses in terms of healthcare, RBS have been and were 100% supportive, and they lent majority of the money to us to purchase practice. If they didn't lend what they did, I wouldn't be able to buy the practice. Now, what we were talking about on the panel was sort of people backing you or not backing you. And I think there can be some nervousness with when you discuss your future plans, when they involve brave things or big decisions or big money. I think you have to be very careful who you speak to about that, basically, because if they don't have a similar mindset to you, if they don't have a similar vision to you, if they've not walked that walk, they're not going to understand your journey. They are probably going to be thinking that you've lost the plot, basically, and they'll put that negative voice in your head where prior to speaking to them, you were like, yeah, this is it, it's what I need to do. I've seen, I've looked at it rationally, I've worked it out, this is what I want to do. And then you speak to that person, that's a negative person. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be critical of things. Absolutely. You want that sort of constructive criticism. But then think about who you're asking. Think about who you're asking and what they have done or achieved in their life. Would you swap your bank balance with them? That's what I would say is one of the big barometers as to when you're taking advice from somebody. And look at where they are now or what they have done. Because if you're asking somebody, and without being disrespectful, that works at a local supermarket, whether you should buy this business that's a six-figure business and go into six figures amount of debt, I mean, I think the answer is going to be no. Why would you do that? Because they have that scarcity money mindset where they want to sort of be secure and know that this is what I do, this is what I earn, and I'm comfortable. And that is absolutely fine. If that works for you, great, that's great. But then if that doesn't work for you and you don't have that, you have more of a growth mindset where you're thinking 1, 2, 3, 10 years in advance where you want your life to be, then that person probably isn't going to be the person that's going to be able to advise you on that. So my first point would be from this podcast episode is think about who you're talking to and whether they're going to add value to what you're saying, and what have they done already that makes them credible to give you that advice. Like, what makes them credible to give you that advice? So the second thing that I would say, which I wasn't aware of until sort of past few years, was that there's alternative routes to financing your business purchases or investments in your business. I'm not just talking about buying a business, I'm talking about sort of longevity wise, because once you've bought the business, you can't just buy it and think that's it, that's me done for the next 30 years. There's going to be things changing. You have to invest in your business. Like in my case, it was sort of purchasing equipment, purchasing furniture, having a refit, things like that the costs do add up. And I found that traditional lenders, in terms of your current banks, and were not basically willing to lend on those sort of purchases. And from a business's perspective, most of the time it does make sense to finance these things because you can claim certain allowances and reliefs on it. And it just helps with cash flow as well in your business. So I sort of quickly realised that finding lenders specific in your profession was another option that you could explore when you feel like your doors are closed from your traditional banks who you bank with. So in my case, I work with a optician specific financing company, and they have been brilliant, for me in sort of various times over the past few years. And they're quick, they're efficient, and they just get it done. And you deal with that one person. So that would be my second tip: is if you are in a certain sector and you are struggling to secure finance for XYZ in your business, then maybe look at sector specific finance companies. And potentially you might be paying more for them, but usually when you are looking for finance for these things, it's more of a short-term finance anyway. So in the grand scheme of things, are you paying more when you're going to be able to claim certain allowances and things on there? And then the third thing, which was really sort of great that I learned from the panel, I'm familiar with angel investing already, and it was really uplifting to hear like Tony speak about angel investing from her perspective. And it was what made me really sort of smile about it was that she was saying that she's not that fixed on the business idea that the person is suggesting. She's investing in them as a person. And I think that for me resonated so much because 10 years ago, the person that I bought my practice off, he was investing in me, and fair enough, he's took my money now, that's fine. But the fact is, he could see something in me that I couldn't see in myself. And he facilitated this purchase in terms of guiding me down the path to, to buy the practice. And I'm not saying it wasn't for personal gain, because I completely understand it was. But he didn't need to do that. He could have sold to a chain, and I know there were offers made that were more than what I was going to pay for it. So he could have sold it for more money very quickly, basically. But he chose to go with me because he must have maybe seen something in me. And I'm not saying he was an angel investor, but I thought the mindset of if you're going for angel investment, the mindset that you want to sort of align with, in my opinion, when you're looking at angel investing is that person investing in you, not just your idea? Because if they're investing in you, potentially they can help you grow, sort of emotionally, mentally, business wise, personally. And I just thought that was such a strong thing for Tony to say. She said, because as long as they're sort of investable, then it doesn't matter sort of in which way you sort of focus that business acumen in, it's probably going to work. And I think you don't see that often at the moment, where you've got angel investors that are specific to females, but that is changing. I know that's changing. But then it was just really sort of uplifting to hear that. And one of the other things that I learned from being on the panel was about the British Business Bank and how it operates, and how sort of they can facilitate certain lending. And when I was speaking to Vicky on the panel, she was saying to me that when I was talking about my journey in terms of being told no by so many different banks that I can't get the finance that I need to purchase the practice, she said, did you go to the traditional lenders? Did you go to high street banks? Did you not go to anybody else? And I was like, I didn't know there was anybody else to go to. Like, how do I know that? So I think one of the other things that I probably would have liked back 10 years ago is some kind of course incorporated either into like my banking, when I started sort of into business banking, or even earlier than that at university, or even earlier than that really, which it should be, I think, like financial education and things like that at school, because I think that would have helped me so much sort of entering into the business world, with not obviously an MBA, but to have at least a good little toolkit of business tools that I could experiment with and play with and have a little bit of knowledge with, rather than walking in, pardon the pun, blind into something. So I think from a chamber perspective, and I think they may or may not already do this, I'm not sure, but if there's anybody listening that's sort of financial services or chamber or small business support services, if there's anything that you can offer in terms of that sort of soft business skills, or to sort of look at balance sheets, profit and loss, that kind of thing, how to access, finance, how to access non-traditional routes of lending and grants and things like that. Because even actually, Vicky was talking to me about grants, and I was like, I didn't realise that was an option. And she's talking to me about sort of, across Yorkshire, there's this, I think it's like £6 million pot that you can sort of apply for business or entrepreneurs and things. And I think if you are already entrepreneurial, you'll try and make those inquiries yourself. But there might be people out there that have got the idea, but are put off thinking there's no way I can get this off the ground because I don't have the money. And I think a lot of people do feel that you need to have X amount to do Y. But then I think if you do a little bit of digging, you'll realise that you probably don't have to have the whole of X to get Y. You just need a little bit of the X. Or if you haven't even got the X, you've got somebody like Tony that will give you the X to get you to the Y. So I think my main message is to sort of do some research around that. But I would probably strongly urge organisations that are to have that privilege to be able to offer certain sort of free access courses to promote them, whether it's at college, at colleges, at schools, at university placements, things like that, because we don't know what we don't know. So if we don't sort of advertise it, I suppose, in a way, then those entrepreneurs that are thinking, oh, do you know what, I might want to do that, may never do that because they're already sort of in their mind decided that's unachievable, and it's not. In this day and age, it's not unachievable. And I think the key message that I sort of wanted to get across on the panel was that if you've got an idea, if you've got that urge, you've got that pull, just do it, just go with it, because what's the worst that can happen? That it doesn't work, but you'll gain so much in the process whilst you're going through those motions, and you'll learn, refine and repeat, basically, and each time you'll get better. And I was on a course the other weekend, and somebody used the analogy of a baby, and how a baby sort of starts to sit up first, then starts to crawl a little, and to crawl a little bit, and then they slowly start holding onto the side of the sofa, for example, and they start to take the first steps, and they're a little bit unsteady, and then they're off and they start walking. And that's how you should look at your business journey, really, in my opinion, is that you're sitting up, and then you're starting to crawl a little bit, you fall over, you get back up, you fall over, you get back up, but keep going. And that's the main message, is that you need to keep going, because there will be hurdles. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be, pardon the French, but it's going to be bloody hard. It's going to be a bloody roller coaster. But the key thing is you need to keep going. And it's the same theme and trend through anybody's entrepreneurial business journey. If you speak to, they will say to you that, do you know what, it was crap, like, that year was crap, or that month was crap, but we sort of learned from it, and then we change things. And that's the other thing, like, it's never going to be perfect, because once it's perfect, then what are you going to do? If you're working, whether it's on your personal development, your business development, you could aim for perfection, but I can probably tell you now, you're never going to get it, because things are constantly changing and evolving. And that's the beauty of business, is that there's no end point. And as entrepreneurs, that's exciting. Whereas if you have a slightly different mindset, where you think, I need to get to that and then that's it, then I don't know whether entrepreneurial sort of journey is for you. And I think if you are a true sort of business owner and entrepreneur at heart, then that's part of the thrill of it, that it's never complete. There's always something new happening. So I hope that helps. Just my little insights from my panel discussion this week, and what I sort of learned listening to other females talking about different sort of sectors there. So if you've got any comments or questions, please pop them below, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for listening.